Of course, we should ban kitty and libel and personal threats and calls for insurrection. That's a no-brainer because they're already illegal. Just as it would be illegal in an actual town square to whip out
But Bill Maher doesn't think it's true, since he reveals the hypocrisy and delusion that are destroying his own side. Maher, who has always been liberal, has become the biggest annoyance for the left. He says the once noble liberal movement has traded truth for tribalism and reason for rage. Strong claim, but listen to what he has to say.
Completely believe any of it. Not right away. Not until I check it out. And when I ask, is it true? Usually the answer turns out to be, well, sort of. Or yes, but yeah. See, we've all become very adept at saying things that are technically true but lack context, or that leave out half the story. So if we're going to ban untruth, does that include the half-truth, the quarter-truth? And wait, don't the wokest people in the world believe that what really matters is your truth?
If the left insists on acting as society's self-appointed truth police, then it's fair to ask, what kind of truth are they actually defending? Is it the kind that challenges power or the kind that protects it? It's easy to champion truth when it supports your agenda, reinforces your beliefs, and paints you as morally superior. But the real test comes when that same truth flips the narrative, when it exposes flaws in your favorite stories, idols, or ideologies. That's when most people suddenly lose interest in honesty. Maher's point is both simple and devastating. The truth should never be politicized. You can't claim to stand for facts while dismissing or mocking those that don't suit your viewpoint. You either support truth consistently, wherever it leads, or you're not promoting honesty at all. You're just managing propaganda with good marketing.
Of course, we should ban kitty libel and personal threats and calls for insurrection. That's a no-brainer because they're already illegal. Just as it would be illegal in an actual town square to whip out
When facts are selectively changed, filtered, or misrepresented to support a political position, then is when the real danger occurs. When data is utilized selectively to bolster a position or silence dissent. That's not truth policing. It is the falsification of the facts. For years, Maher has been condemning it. He notes that the left no longer defends free speech, but now demands ideological conformity. They are no longer just exposing falsehoods. They have the power to decide whatever version of the truth is made public. That is, in fact, the most detrimental kind of censorship. The one that is done to protect individuals from ideas that they are perfectly capable of assessing for themselves, and that is done under the guise of moral virtue.
digital town square. And so should bots and deep fakes be banned and anything else that aren't really the people who say they are. But that's an entirely different thing than actual people expressing an opinion as repugnant or offensive or as misguided as some opinions may be. This is still America. Where people have the right to express what they think, including to be wrong, to lie, and yes, the right to be an. And if you think you know everything and no one else could possibly have some other truth, you should be glad for that protection, because you're an.
He condemned the misleading information regarding vaccine reporting, how everybody who opposed the decree was instantly branded as dangerous, conceited, or uninformed. Throughout the outbreak, the public was inundated with terrifying information from mainstream media outlets claiming that hospitals were overflowing with unvaccinated individuals. However, Maher claims that the data paints an entirely different image. According to him, the numbers were exaggerated to coerce centers into compliance and shame. Actually, less than 1% of those who refused the immunization ended up in the hospital. It's not just a straightforward fix. This discovery completely upends the narrative. Ma also sees it as another example of how blind reliance in political propaganda may lead to widespread deception.
Democrats Democrats last year believed the hospitalization rate if you got COVID unvaccinated was over 50%, when it was actually less than 1%. Somebody's misinformation got to those people. Sometimes misinformation is just history's first draft. I see a lot of things on social media and also on old fucks media.
Exactly. That's the heart of the issue. The woke crowd seems perpetually offended by something. Nothing feels safe anymore. A harmless joke, a classic poem, or even an old movie can suddenly be labeled problematic simply because it doesn't fit today's constantly shifting moral standards. It's like walking through a cultural minefield where intention doesn't matter, only interpretation does. Comedy, once the final refuge of free expression, has taken the hardest hit. Comedians now tiptoe around every word, terrified that a single line might spark outrage or cost them their careers. Yet despite the backlash and the growing exhaustion of everyday Americans with this outrage circus, the self-proclaimed crusaders of wokeness refuse to stop. They keep trying to sterilize humor and dictate what's acceptable to laugh at.
Story that more effectively captures what's wrong with today's journalism than the sad saga of what happened last week at the Washington Post. They need to keep it to themselves because it would be too depressing. If you missed it, the Washington Post recently got embroiled in a self-inflicted shitstorm when one of their best reporters, David Weigel, retweeted this joke. Every girl is bi. You just have to figure out if it's polar or... Proving it is a joke. Thank you. The comedian who actually wrote the tweet called it a banal throwaway joke, which is exactly what it is. Throwaway, as in if you don't like it, throw it away. For eons, both sexes have made jokes about how the other is crazy, and no one but the perpetually offended thinks it means anything more than that the sexes get frustrated over how differently we each see the world. And yes, we relieve some of that frustration with humor and scene.
What annoys me the most about cancel culture is that it never ends with an apology. Whether you take down the tweet, apologize profusely, and make an effort to put things right, doesn't matter. The mob does not desire remorse. Ruin is the aim. If they have found you guilty, they intend to destroy you completely. Along with your job, money, and reputation, they also target your family. Nothing is prohibited. One misinterpreted joke or post from a decade ago may become a full-fledged witch hunt due to social media fury and virtue signaling. There is no longer any accountability. Dominance is the issue. The objective is to demonstrate who dominates the narrative and who is silenced. And Ma keeps cautioning about that. When forgiveness vanishes and rage becomes a sport, society stops progressing. It eats itself alive, one canceled person at a time.
Weigel pulled down his retweet and wrote, "I apologize and did not mean to cause any harm," and that was the end of that. I'm joking, of course. The unlicensed daycare center that is today's newsroom went... You see, the Post has another writer named Felicia Sonmez, and she's a lot. For example, she tweeted about Kobe Bryant's 2003 rape trial hours after his helicopter crash. And despite the fact that she says Dave Weigel is a good friend, she resurrected the tweet he had taken down with a screenshot and demanded to know what the Post was going to do about this unacceptable evil that must not be allowed to stand. Sarcastically writing, "Fantastic to work at a news outlet where tweets like this are allowed." Yes, can you imagine a world that allows jokes you don't?
And for that same reason, cancel culture needs to stop. It doesn't know when or where to draw the line. A call for accountability quickly develops into a full-fledged crusade against anyone who dares to think otherwise. It is never enough to condemn the initial offender. The crowd also targets anyone who defends them, questions the commotion, or even stays silent. The new law assumes the role of associative guilt. The cancel mob will soon be going through years' worth of posts in an effort to destroy reputations, careers, and means of subsistence. It's a vicious cycle of moral frenzy driven by fear. People stop speaking up because they are afraid of being the next to say something, not because they are wrong. And that's the real danger. In this self-censoring echo chamber, intimidation replaces dialogue and public humiliation becomes the new means of control.
The Post folded like a Miami condo, and and suspended Weigel without pay for a month and denounced the offending retweet as a gross violation of their values, free speech apparently not being one of them. Then a third Post reporter offered up the idea, of course on Twitter, because why do anything privately, that, hey, maybe everyone was overreacting and we should all just calm down. And then it was really on. Felicia demanded that the Post discipline him and tweeted about that. I assume she's tweeting about this right now.
For them, all it takes to define you forever is one misplaced belief or poorly worded joke from years ago. Redemption and context are totally out of the question. They fail to recognize the obvious. As we age and gain more life experience, our perspectives always shift. Individuals are not always what they claim to be at the age of 20. Personal development, however, is not a priority for the outrage brigade. The only thing that matters at the moment is moral purity. The fact that change is what makes us human seems to have slipped their minds. We are expected to change our minds, mature, and become better people. But the woke crowd acts as if development is a crime and forgiving is a weakness.
Aged with the fire of 1,000 burning sending a gazillion tweets calling for more to be done against Weigel, mocking her bosses, attacking colleagues, and letting the world know how much the Washington Post sucked. And this endless bickering and infighting continued online in public view until the bell rang and they all went to 7th period. Now, note that I haven't yet told you what age Felicia Sonmez and her quarreling co-workers are. Why? Because I didn't have to. Because you can't imagine someone my age acting like this in an office. Just ran an op-ed entitled, "Why Are We Still Governed by Baby Boomers?" This is why. Because too many millennials are overly sensitive, overly fragile, and have no sense of priorities. You know, I'm sure many boomers would love to retire, but they can't. They're like the grandmother who'd much rather be watching Judge Judy, but has to raise her grandkids because her own kids are to manage it.
In the end, Maher's message is straightforward but deeply resonant. Truth should never depend on political allegiance, and free speech is not up for debate. The left's growing fixation on cancel culture, moral grandstanding, and sanctioned truths is doing far more damage than good. When people become too afraid to speak honestly, society loses its capacity to think freely. Comedy fades, conversation withers, and all that remains is conformity. Maher may not be everyone's favorite commentator, but he's one of the few willing to challenge his own side when it matters. He reminds us that once truth becomes partisan, it stops being truth altogether. Real progress doesn't come from silencing dissent. It comes from facing uncomfortable facts and giving people the room to evolve. That's the kind of America we need again, one that values dialogue over dogma, forgiveness over fury, and truth over tribalism. And with that, we'll wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more thought-provoking discussions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.